Welcome to In the Studio, a 21st century perspective on history's greatest rock bands. I'm Redbeard, and today in the studio, the band with the little three-letter name, a big lineup, an even bigger sound, and a vast musical legacy.
With 90125, we were cinema at that time, and John came in and it changed the whole validity of it, really, in so many ways. Because, you know, John has the unique voice of the band, and really, it's, you know, that's what it is. That's really when it becomes Yes, too.
The sound of Yes's harmonies is not John, it's John and Chris. And the others try, get involved, but really no one else can sing. It's really John and Chris's voice that make the difference.
I think we were always into sort of uplifting music. You know, I personally, I didn't follow the Stones into their satanic realm. I followed the Beatles into All You Need Is Love. Lift me up and turn me over. Lead me on into the door. Magnificate, magnification. Magnificate, magnification.
I'm Alan White of Yes with Redbeard.
I'm John Anderson of Yes with Redbeard.
I'm Tony Kaye of Yes.
This is Trevor Rabin of Yes. You're in the studio.
When we left off in part one, the second era of the British progressive rockers Yes, comprised of band co-founders John Anderson and Chris Squire, with latest recruits Rick Wakeman, Steve Howe, and Alan White, had the #1 selling album in the UK and America with Close to the Edge. Indicative of the heady times at the peak of the progressive rock era, Yes chose to follow up with a multi-disc live album and then a 4-sided studio opus called Tales from Topographic Oceans in '74. Talking to Yes drummer Alan White and guitarist Steve Howe, I wondered aloud if there was a music label on the planet today that would give any band that kind of carte blanche. Alan White goes first in the studio.
I don't know. It was a different world then. We'd have ideas for songs and all go in and play them until the album was completed.
Yeah, I mean, 1970, we all lived in England. Yeah. You know, the sound of the group was consistently British. Because we used to make records, we used to go in and we'd have a month, and then we'd do a few shows, and then we'd have another month. I mean, we used to make records either in a four-month block, like Topographic took 4 months. That was considered at the time.
There was 4 sides of music
in
4 months?
And that was incredibly short by today's standards.
Crazy to do that amount of time in the studio.
But then Paul Simon recorded Bridge Over Troubled Waters, the album, and that took a year, and that kind of set a whole new precedent. I mean, it meant that every musician now could take a year to do his album, because that's how you did an album that good.
Absolutely spine-tingling vocal performance by John Anderson and a gorgeous melody and arrangement on the song Soon, which appeared on the Yes album Relayer, also in 1974. But all was not well in or out of the band. They were on their third keyboard player, Patrick Moratz, after Rick Wakeman went on a solo sabbatical. And the next almost 10 years found diminishing returns and band member defections in the wake of the punk rock and so-called new wave bands who found Yes an easy target. By 1981, the band had disbanded and the members scattered. There were some promising but ultimately false starts, such as Alan White and Chris Squire demoing music with Led Zeppelin guitar great Jimmy Page for the working title of XYZ, but it was nixed by managers. Then the White-Squire rhythm section hooked up with young South African singer-songwriter guitarist Trevor Rabin, along with original Yes keyboard player Tony Kaye, and calling themselves Cinema. They were almost ready to finish a complete album they had worked on for the better part of a year when Chris Squire played the Cinema recordings for his old friend John Anderson, who was so impressed that John volunteered to sing these songs himself. Trevor Rabin admits that while flattered that Anderson was so excited by the Cinema songs, it did put Trevor Rabin in an awkward spot.
There was parts of it which I felt were a little peculiar, because I was just so unaccustomed to hearing John singing my songs, obviously. Then he sang Hearts, which is, I think, the last track on the second side. And I really liked it. And we spoke, and he joined the band. And only at that point, which was, out of 9 months, was the last month of the album. And that was at which point we called the band Yes.
When I asked cinema keyboard player Tony Kaye about his initial reaction, John Anderson jumped in first.
Shock. Oh, it's him again.
It was a shock to the system. It was a shock to the system. Him again. It's so natural and so obvious, that it's not a shock at all. It happened with 90125. We were cinema at that time, and John came in, and it changed the whole validity of it, really, in so many ways. Because, John has the unique voice of the band, and really, that's what it is. And that's really when it becomes Yes, too. It was the same scenario for Own a Lonely Heart, too.
Yes, that went through quite a transformation, didn't it?
Well, it was on a tape of a lot of songs, and I will always remember, because we were actually, when Trevor and I first went to London, we were sharing a room at our manager's house, because we couldn't find the hotel or something, and we were lying in bed listening to a lot of music, and I heard this thing. It was just like a few bars of this thing, same thing.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, "Oh, no, it's a funk song that I wrote for someone." I said, "Trevor, we got to try this." And of course, he went through a lot of transitions, but he was going to skip by it.
Chris Squire and Trevor Rabin joined me in the studio to discuss their comeback as Yes on the album 90125. What's evolved in the band's attitude that would allow you to even consider putting out this song with that arrangement and having the name Yes on it?
Well, I think it's got quite a lot to do with him, Trevor, that is. I mean, especially based on the back of when Trevor joined the band, and we got Own a Lonely Heart to #1. That, for the same reason at the time, also it gained a lot of interest, because people thought, God, that's Yes, doing this, and it was basically a kind of a dance rock song. Funnily enough, after that, like, more rock songs became dance orientated, it seemed. But so we kind of set a little pattern there. But I think that's because we do take chances, and that's probably why we're still around.
Good point. But we always have thought of you as taking chances to the left field, to the outer reaches. It's interesting to have the confidence and the talent to revisit potentially the same neighborhood that you were in with Owner. Mm-hmm. And you kind of liked the neighborhood when you were at #1, didn't you?
Yeah.
I think a lot of the time people assume that there's this contrived or organized system that we have of doing a record, and really it's totally it's disorganized, untogether. Nobody knows from 1 minute to the next what's going on.
And you're damn proud of it.
Yes, absolutely. And I mean, with Owner, it was a song that I didn't even intend to play to the band, and when and I was kind of thumbing through songs kind of thing for us to get into or not, and when Owner came up and said, yeah, and that's, all credit to Chris and, and Alan, and for taking the chance after their heritage of Yes to delve into that area, because had it gone the wrong way, they could have been whipped and lashed for doing that.
Absolutely.
By the diehard Yes fans, but it turned out to be the right thing, and I think that's the tradition of, it's like, yeah, let's go for it, it works.
Selling over 4 million in the U.S. alone, the album 90125 by Yes was one of the biggest comebacks in music history. I'm Redbeard. Up next, Steve Howe, Alan White, John Anderson, and Tony Kaye all rejoin us in the studio as the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame welcomes Yes.
I'm Alan White of Yes with Redbeard.
I'm John Anderson of Yes with Redbeard.
I'm Tony Kaye of Yes.
This is Trevor Rabin of Yes. You're in the studio.
Thank you all. The big band with the little 3-letter name decided to follow their enormous comeback with 90125 and the subsequent world tour with the album Big Generator in 1987. Here's Yes guitarist Steve Howe, followed by drummer Alan White.
It's sort of musical mayhem, if you like. Trevor Horn had a
controlled.
lovely way of putting it. He said, the epitome of Yes is to try and do the impossible and make it work. And like very often, the things that we did, like 3 lines going at once and somebody else singing, and
you get shell shock afterwards.
It isn't a thing that a lot of groups want to do, or maybe could do, or would care to do. But it happens that this group called Yes, that's changed. It's evolved. A lot has always wanted to do what other people don't want to do. It's almost like the most obstinate group you could find.
Didn't always work. I mean, some things were like...
Oh, no. Sometimes
it's so chaotic. It was...
And sometimes it's become more accessible, and that also... I mean, that's part of it's changing, if you like. When I was in Asia, funny enough, Yes were becoming more like a group that were actually going for the charts, but wanting to keep the ideas that they had. But developing. I mean, in a way, in the 70s, we never really thought like that. But I appreciate how much the 80s were very different from the 70s, and the concession, not really concessions, but the necessity for a group to carry on successfully is that if it's not successful, we won't carry on. Now, if you've got that as a challenge, well, look, if the group's not successful, we've got to stop. Then the group's got to be successful because you've got to keep it going. So in a way, you have to find out how to keep it going, and part of that is having success, which is the thing everybody wants, especially in LA. So it's like you're trying to do the impossible again, but in a way without playing music that would cheapen the idea of what Yes is. That's changed a lot, and certainly the kind of time, money and patience it's taken to do this whole project, piece it all together, has been quite a strain on the producer, I should think. And it's been, a long time coming, but I would think it would have been inconceivable at that time that anybody would spend this long, throw away most probably as many tracks as have gone by the by, either at demo stage or a few recorded and then kind of elbowed later. Quite a lot of reels of tape, I would think it would be inconceivable.
We took that to the absolute limit with Big Generator. It took almost 2 years. From beginning to end, re-recorded certain tracks 3 times. Absolutely, that was wrong to do that. Because it suffered the album at the end of it all. It was just too much.
You can lose your center.
Total.
Yeah.
Totally lost it.
The Rhythm of Love comes from the 1987 Yes Big Generator album, but the big expectations for it exceeded actual sales. Like water finding every crack, the old creative and personality conflicts reared up once again, with lead singer John Anderson leaving again and taking guitarist Steve Howe with him to join former Yes men Rick Wakeman and Bill Bruford to record and tour as...
Yeah, Anderson, Bruford, Wakeman and Howe. It's like a firm of solicitors,
Yeah, a law firm, right?
Yeah, you can't get a longer name than that.
No.
So it just seemed... it was just a tag, really. But inside, people would ask me, what do I do? And I say, I'm a musician, I work in a group. What's the group called? I'd always say yes. The most important thing for me was seeing 2 sides of the coin. I had a 90125 Big Generator group, and which was and is an incredibly powerful unit with Alan, Chris, and Trevor, and Tony, and to work with Steve and Rick and Bill again, and we had Tony Levin on bass. There was a lot of finesse there, and in some ways, I could say, well, I miss the heaviness of Chris and Trevor and Alan, and then when I'm with Chris and Trevor and Alan, sometimes I miss a little finesse. It's just the way the makeup of these musicians is extraordinary, and I was very fortunate to work with both teams.
So then it got really crazy. For the 1991 album Union, keyboardist Tony Kaye joins John Anderson and me in the studio.
Just like he appeared during the 90125 album. Yeah. Actually, I think in many ways we kind of stumble along.
It's true. Looking for an opening.
Looking for an opening.
It's like getting a table at a restaurant.
I don't think anyone really thinks about it. It's not like the phone calls are made.
Yeah.
And
it would never happen.
It would never happen like that. It has to happen by stumbling along and even if it's separately, to go through a period of writing music. And then somehow at the end of that period, just like it did in 90125 and probably before in certain ways, different ways, it stumbles along to the necessary right conclusion.
Composers Trevor Rabin and the late Chris Squire. Let's go to the conclusion of the Big Generator 88 tour. After you've rested up from the tour, at that time, what was the plan? What was next?
The plan at that time was that, we knew that Trevor had to deliver his solo album for Elektra, and so he went off to work on that. And I think for some reason experienced for the second time some growing frustration with sort of being involved in the band, mainly because I think he thought that we moved too slowly, and in many ways we do. But it isn't really, you can't really ever point a finger at any one person for being guilty for that, really.
No.
It's just the nature of the beast that we just happen to go at a slower pace, and that's maybe why we're still here doing it. I don't know, but John went off and did some of his solo projects, I believe. I think he did a solo album for
CBS.
CBS,
Yeah.
That's right. And then he obviously after that he got involved with reawakening. The old Wakeman, Howe, and
Reawakening.
Reawaken.
I like that.
Awakeman.
Awakening.
Yeah, so, and then, by the time all that stuff was going down, a couple of years goes by really easily, and here we are in 1991.
After John returned to London and organized the ABWH album and tour, how did that change your plans? And was it always left when Trevor went to do his solo record? Was it open-ended, or was there a commitment to always return?
No, we were still very much a band at the time. And in fact, because I wasn't sure about what John was doing, I was spending my time looking around, for suitable replacements for John, or substitute, whichever way you want to put it.
I was about to say.
He does tend to come and go. He's
Yes.
got a bit of a track record of that. So, and I met a guy called Billy Sherwood, a good friend of Trevor's, who I, wrote some songs with, and so I was working towards working him into the band so that when Trevor finished his solo thing, we could all get back together. And then for various reasons, I think mainly because Billy got a little bit nervous, I think, about taking on the responsibility of the job, but it didn't come about. So,
Can you imagine the shoes he would be expected to fill?
Yeah.
Yeah. After my solo album and solo tour and everything, really, I mean, Chris, I think, has, in the interim period, written some of the best stuff I think he's ever written, which he didn't seem to want to say.
Thank you.
And I think I wrote some stuff which, to be honest, wasn't intended for this album. That, and what we've done is what we were going to be doing at one point was to do a Yes album with the songs that we submitted for this Union album, and along with Chris's songs, and anyway, what's emerged out of that is that the songs that I kind of brought along, and Lift Me Up is one I wrote with Chris, but those songs have landed up on the Union album, and then some of these other songs which Chris has done will land up on this box set album. Oh. So we've kind of spread out the work. So it's not as though we sat around doing nothing. I mean, there's a lot of writing's been going on, a lot of work. And Chris has been working pretty hard, looking, Billy wasn't the first guy that came along. There's a lot of other good people, good options. And one of the options we even thought about was just keeping it a 4-piece. Lift Me Up was totally finished, and there's a version with Chris and I on it, and that was going to be the one on the record. And then we kind of superimposed John on top of it, and it didn't quite work as well as it should have. And that's one of the reasons for the remix, to really get John integrated into the song. John was in the middle of this album, and he called me about a year ago to ask whether I'd like to come and guest on the Anderson Bruford Wakeman Howe album as a guitarist and maybe write a song or two. And I at that time found it a little bit of a strange thing to be doing, as I was in this band, and it's like, kind of, where's the separation, if you know what I mean? I just found it a bit strange. And
I can imagine.
And I thought, if Steve is the guitarist of that band, that's who should be the guitarist. So I didn't do that, and that started something happening, and then a promoter started getting involved in an idea of this whole thing. And to be honest, we were, of the tour initially, not the album, of this reunion tour. And
so the initial idea was really
the tour.
A tour.
Yeah, it came from Larry Maggot.
And Chris and I spoke on the phone, and to be perfectly candid, we thought, this is ridiculous, this is a bullshit idea, it's a nonsense idea, it's totally ridiculous. We both thought it was totally ludicrous.
Any more adjectives?
No, I was just trying to find... I mean, I can't express how much we thought it was. I guess I have. And the more...
Was it ludicrous?
As well.
Yes. And then one thing led to another, and then Chris was approached to go and do some vocals on the Anderson, Bruford, Wakeman, Howe album. And, and then he thought, well, maybe it could be fun. You speak for yourself on that. But he did it. And then this tour started... That kept coming up, guys, this could be great, can you imagine? And it was really only in, all the figures and stuff were mentioned, and it was only when we kind of realized that there's a possibility that something creative could emerge out of this that we thought, well, hang on, this could be pretty amazing.
Composers Trevor Rabin and the late Chris Squire discussed the song "Lift Me Up." And tell me, you two wrote that together?
Well, yeah, what happened was, I'd kind of been writing the song, and Chris and I have always had a kind of successful relationship songwriting-wise and lyrically. And so I was having a couple of problems with the lyrics, and he'd basically come in to work on the song with me, and so we just rewrote the lyrics, and we're both very happy with the lyrics, I think.
Yeah, it was a very enjoyable couple of days that we spent on that.
Who came up with the chorus? Did he already have the chorus, or did you come up?
Lift Me Up.
Lift Me Up was there, Lift Me Up and Turn Me Over, but things like imperial behavior and little quirkinesses that he seems to bring in every now and then, which obviously initially I said, no way.
Actually, you didn't, because you remember you came up with that line, because we just had a dictionary on the left, and we were just actually having fun with the song, and we were doing things like just opening the page and pointing a finger on the word.
Oh, that's right.
And that's how you came up with imperial.
That's right.
You realize what you're doing? There's people listening to this all over North America that go, so that's how they do it. Give me a dictionary quick.
Not every time.
Yeah. But and thereafter to defend the to defend the procedure, thereafter we make sure it says something. And once again, lyrically in the verse a little dark. We try to make it somewhat vague as to what it's about, but one of the pictures is that it's a homeless person, and I look around, I got nowhere to stay. You look me up, you look me down. The guy who goes into the restaurant to use the bathroom, and they look at him. No, you can't come in here. And then he just looks to the sky, lift me up and turn me over. Help me out. So
that's landing up. It actually is pretty specifically about
it's pretty
that.
Specific, but we didn't mention specifically homeless because it could be about.
Keeps it broader.
Keeps it a little broader, but that's what it was intended for. That's how we kind of.
Focus.
That was the focus. Yeah.
I think definitely the Yes theme has always been a hopeful one. I think rather than light and dark. I think we've used dark expressionism in order to show the difference between the good and evil, or light and dark, whichever way it is. But usually even if the songs refer to darkness, it's because there's a positive attitude at the end of it.
Here's Yes guitarist Steve Howe, followed by drummer Alan White.
To some extent, the artists want, and then
to some extent,
to some
extent, the artist is last. If you noticed,
so at that point, the technology, is delivering an end finished, perfected record. But a lot of times, of course, if you listen to something it's very often you can hear something recorded on a 2-track that has all the emotional qualities of music.
Right,
and what rock groups really, bands have done generally, is much like they make movies. I mean, movies are not shot by the guy walking through the door saying, "Hi, darling, I'm home," and she says, "Hi." You know, that might have taken 3 days. You know, so records are made like that now, which is kind of frightening. But also, us players actually enjoy that process. I enjoy stripping down the guitars and then building up a whole new framework for the guitars, and then I enjoy putting a good bit back in that was live. Because
but someone has to be objective so that you don't lose the feel that Alan was talking about.
The drummer here with us.
The drummer, yes. One of
the designated feel guy.
That's it. You know, the way we always used to do it, the band always played everything together in the studio first, whereas as nowadays sometimes you get the click tracks which drummers are having to deal with. It's not a great world to deal with. It's providing something without other musicians play. But I think in the last 2 or 3 years, a lot of guys, such as myself, have got over that and can visualize what the music, especially if you've played it beforehand when you get in the studio. And we played the part of the album that's ours. We had played the tracks before. And then as a result, using the technology we have, a lot of those finished things were done, except for the drums. Had been done in Trevor's studio. So there I just went in and laid my parts on them, tried to keep the emotion that I felt from before and put it on the track.
With the flow, I think a drummer adds the real flow and top kit and overheads. And it's quite good for the group or an artist or guitarist to actually get his music sorted out in strict perfection, and then really gradually at the end of the album start to take the tracks and de-perfect them. In other words, add a real drummer.
Right.
Because until that point, the only thing you're working with is a very rigid, immovable sort of rightness about it, which is great for stacking up what you want to do. But then at the end of the day, you don't want that. So a lot of what you've been working around has only been there really to perfect the idea.
Right.
And then your drummer plays on it, and then of course you've got
kind of like the scaffolding as you're building the building, but you don't leave the scaffolding up when you're done, right?
No, the scaffolding is like the programmed drums that I know people in America don't even want to hear. Unfortunately for Alan and all other drummers, including my son Dylan, who wants to be a drummer, then drummers are in big business now, because I mean, you know, America certainly has not got too excited about programmed drums. I mean, it's been big in Europe for a long time.
The art is capturing what the song is and the emotion, and knowing every facet of the song, and going in and translating that, and providing the foundation and the colors to work with it. And it takes a while to kind of get everything right and be able to go in and do that, because it's you alone out there in the studio providing the foundation of something that's already been done in the most part. And what happens generally is, and it happened with most of these tracks here, is that you go in and you create something within that framework, and then they end up playing to that even more and using certain drum breaks and making orchestral parts to the music out of the drum breaks. It really is inventive that way.
But this is a different musical experience. This is a different listening process now, that what we're under, because we can't listen to things very easily now that go out of time, that aren't in tune. I mean, not just because we're the musicians, but I'm talking about the public in general. We're used to a very solid beat, you know, almost unreal, if you look at disco music and things like that. I mean, that is really an unreal quality. It's so perfect. It gets in tune with your heart, gets in tune with your whole body. It dominates you, while what used to happen was a drummer pushed here, rushed there, held back here, you know, did drum breaks, and it was all kind of wild, and in a way swayed the audience with you. You know, this isn't only the drummer, of course, that did that. The bass players are equally guilty, and guitarists and keyboard players.
Here comes the chorus, get ready.
Yeah,
boom.
Everybody would lurch into bits, and it would be basically wrong, but we liked it, you know. But now it can't be wrong, and most of the time we still like it because it's so right.
But so that folks haven't lost the track here. When you say it can't be wrong, you're not making some subjective standard saying that it can't be wrong. What you're saying is that the technology demands that it has to be done this certain way.
I'm saying both. I'm saying, because of the process of making records, everything has to be in time and that's kind of nice. I mean, we're taking care of a good thing here. But on the other hand, if everything was a bit out, we're going to get more out. But because it's all so tight, then it's very easy for us to keep doing things to that piece of music because it is in time.
Right. Precision you have to be right on the mark today, unless the music or the song demands that you can move it. And then you just have to then feel what the track's doing. Because there's no one... I agree with what you're saying, but there's no one says it has to be absolutely perfect in time the whole time. Music has to have that humanism, and there is a small element that you have to provide that does provide that to a song for emotion's sake. And but at the same time, things are so precise nowadays that you really have to be on the ball all the way through that track. And technology today allows you to do that because there's so many. It's like in the early days, as it were. Guitarists used to drop in, and they had it easy basically because drums you were never able to drop the whole kit in and out at the same time. But now we have that
luxury,
or that's the word,
or devil, whichever.
But it's different listening to a record made in 1990 than 1970.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not too bothered that things might go out of time or the edits aren't really right. But the feel, we were actually recording a performance then, but now we've reinvented, not just us in particular, but the recording industry is reinvented by performances, and it's a new listening experience. It's really diversified from the emotional experience to the I think perfectionistic, but it's almost like a cleansing process. The music, by being so right, can do something beyond what just an emotional record that has an earlier rock record that has inadequacies and it drags, or the snare drums keeps being late.
Right.
We lived with all that because we didn't know how to fix it, but now we do know how to fix it, and it's different musical experience. It's gone a long way from just the emotion, which is almost unspeakable. You can't really talk about that. It sounds very pretentious, really.
Those great hits that we all look fondly back on, that came off of 45 RPM records and stuff like that, they weren't done this way, and I wouldn't change them.
Oh no!
I wouldn't change a thing about them.
I wish we could make records like that again.
Well,
yes,
because
absolutely.
People genuinely want to, and some producers like Trevor Horn, who's a good friend of mine, has gone every which way around to try and get something like that again. But that's the time. That is the date. A 1965 record. I mean, you can fake it. And I hear a few people that do try that, but basically, you can't avoid the techniques and the availability of, as you were saying, technology.
Still to come, Trevor Rabin and Chris Squire there are joined by John Anderson. Follow In the Studio on Facebook and visit inthestudio.net for even more. I'm Redbeard, in the studio with Ultimate Yes Part 2.
I'm Alan White of Yes with Redbeard.
I'm John Anderson of Yes with Redbeard.
I'm Tony Kaye of Yes.
This is Trevor Rabin of Yes. You're in the studio.
And heartiest congratulations to you all on your induction of Yes into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Band co-founder John Anderson sums up the nebulous legacy of Yes.
What I've always said, that Yes is something that hovers above the collective unit and keeps us in tow, keeps us working hard, and keeps our spirits in the right direction in order to make good music with a defined idea, and not to just jump and try to make a hit single. The single market is very, very difficult to understand, difficult to ascertain. 1 minute you're major famous and the next minute you're nothing. I'd rather make 10 good albums than one hit single. It's one of those things that when the Yes idea first came, we would talk only album music.
Open your eyes and ears to Chris Squire, Trevor Rabin, and John Anderson with me in the studio. How important is the music to this?
No, it's the same. Of course it is. It's the main thing that holds it all together. I mean, the love of the music and the enjoyment of actually. I think probably Trevor will agree with me on this, of going on stage and having a really good show and playing it. It's a very uplifting thing. It definitely is what keeps us, driven to do another thing, because that's a great feeling when you get to that point. Probably more than making a record. That
absolutely. But I agree with Chris that the music is the center of it all, And yes, it is the thing that holds it together, but it's also the thing that pulls it apart, you know?
No, I don't know. And I'm not being...
Well, because one of the things that I found, you know, from when I first, you know, from joining the band and joining up, even before John joined, with it being cinema, is, and the thing that I enjoyed most about working with Chris, besides his talent, was he's kind of he's not really a compromising kind of guy. And very often we'd have heated moments. And go home that night and say, oh, God, you know, I'm glad we got the weekend off. I don't have to deal with that tomorrow. But, you know, not having him around, I kind of miss it, you know, because it's very important. I think that relationship is very important. You know, it's something that brings out what it is we do. And then you put John into the equation. I'm talking about the 90125 thing. And it kind of confuses it even further. And it
certainly makes it more complex.
But far more frustrating. But at the end of the day, you know, it's a very rewarding thing. And, you know, it would be much easier for Chris to go off and do an album on his own, or for me to, or for John to. But it wouldn't sound the same as when we're all working together. It doesn't. Something happens when we work together. And that's why I think that's why it takes us a long time to do things. Not because we want to, but because it takes as long as the music demands us to take, kind of thing.
Yes, co-founder John Anderson.
I think we were always into sort of uplifting music. You know, I personally, I didn't follow the Stones into their satanic realm. I followed the Beatles into All You Need Is Love. That was my dream. I loved it, and I tended to follow that train of thought. Even though I saw the Stones last year and it was great, you know, they were just the best.
They were the best.
It's something, I think what Tony said earlier, we seem to, like a magnet towards... We're sort of driven to write this kind of music, and it's not even soul searching. It's very spirited music in many ways, and the love of life, the love and need for understanding, ecology, and you become part and parcel of the people. You're with the people. They want to hear their train of thought put into musical form. That's why they come and see a concert, and we need them to affirm that we're doing the right thing. And the word yes is that affirmation, and it's an umbrella in which we all survive.
Yes got down to a 4-piece in September 2001 with Magnification, a magnificent album arranged with sweeping full orchestration. This edition of In the Studio is dedicated to Yes co-founder Chris Squire, the only member to have appeared on every Yes album. I'm Redbeard, back in the studio after this. This is Redbeard in the studio, congratulating Yes on being inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. In the Studio is written and produced by yours truly, Redbeard, for Bearded Fish Productions. Copyright 2017, all rights reserved. Follow In the Studio on Facebook, at Redbeard Rocks on Twitter, and online at inthestudio.net.